I'm joined by Coach Wayne Hill. How are you, Wayne?
I'm good, Simon. Thank you very much for doing this, and yeah, really excited to join you this morning and just talk some football and get a bit of normality in my life.
Right. Um, as we tend to always do, we're going to be talking about tackling together. So every time we meet, we talk about tackling, which is good. Um, so we saw a couple of your talks in the sort of BAFCA online talks about tackling. I wanted to drill down a little bit on sort of specific positions. So let's talk about D-line tackling and maybe when a D lineman's engaged. So that's a lot different than the approach techniques.
Yeah, I think it's really important, really, because I think the all the advanced tackling and the five fights a great kind of resource for drilling down and developing tackling and having a focus through each one of the five fights. But obviously, it's very different position to position. So, like the focus on tracking would be very different from a D line position than it would be from a safety or a corner side of things. So, where I'd focus on kind of tracking from a D line point of view, it'd be more of like the close quarters tracking side of things, and then also putting obstruction in there as well. So kind of, I don't know if you've all seen like the wave drill where you kind of have somebody in a 5 yard box at the top end, somebody in the 5 yard box at the bottom end, and like an obstructor in the middle. And just that from a D line point of view is a real nice drill that I would use, because one of the things with a D line is you're always going to be getting blocked, or there's always going to be bodies in the way. There's going to be someone getting like falling in your face, and your vision's going to be obstructed. So I think it's really important when you're looking at the tracking side of things for D line is that you put the obstruction or the kind of the vision, the eye wash in there from that point of view. And I think as part of that as well is then you look at kind of the preparing for contact side of things. So I think for me, looking at the preparing for contact, it was always sometimes when you'd start a drill with you'd see start a tackling drill with an up down or something like that. But part of that for me, I've kind of looked into it more and more and spoke to Andy and Richie about it, is that it's all about being able to adjust and get in the right prepare position for that tackle. And that tackle for the D line is going to be kind of really more in that level 3 kind of area. So from kind of chest to belt buckle. So that's kind of the level 3. And if you look at any film and look at any tackling film and watch your own game films, really the defensive line, they're going to be making tackles in that position. So when I'm teaching tackling for the D line, I want to focus on that level 3 tackle. So ensuring that they can go from that more upright position, if they're in that upright position, to get into that level 3, so they can make that shoulder contact between kind of sternum and belt buckle, or they're in a situation where they're going to be scraping underneath and then reposition themselves to get in a good posture to be able to make that position, that strike contact there. So they're the two things that I think really start with the tracking. We don't need to be running for miles and miles on the tracking side of things for D-line. And there are going to be some chase drills that we'll do and some short quarter kind of agility drills and change of direction, because we're going to have to deal with those backs there. But really kind of adjusting your height levels is really important, and being able to get into that kind of level 3 contact position. But as you said, it's kind of actually, as well as the eye wash that we're going to have with the D line, a lot of the time we're going to be actually taking on that block. So starting point is really how can we work on our releases from those blocks, and then the footwork and the track from a release. So I'll be looking at kind of starting off with being fitted up to have that block there, working on a release, and then do my tracking drill from that point of view. So it is more game specific, and it's realistic to have that and work on different releases for the defensive line. And then as you kind of build that up, I'd then be looking at, right, okay, working on making that tackle when you are connected to a blocker. And really for me, when you are connected to that blocker, it's really all about kind of that shoulder punch and that kind of singular arm uppercut from that. So if I'm connected in this position here, we've got a running back coming down this side, then I want to be in a situation where I can press this arm and then punch and connect with the shoulder and connect through with the uppercut. And then once I'm kind of get that connection, I can release this from the blocker and then basically climb into the tackle from that point of view. So I've done some drills with defensive line and linebackers on that, where they kind of work on that punch, work on that uppercut, and then work on climbing in from the block. But one of the things, again, looking at film, is when defensive linemen do that and are connected and then climb into that tackle, their legs normally go dead. And I think that's also something, that's where you'll get kind of the grip won't be there. So I also want to work on clamp and kind of that grapple side of things, because I need to get like good contact and grapple with this the single arm that's connecting. But actually I also need to then, when I climb in, I need to grab cloth and kind of grapple from there. And then finally, from that point of view, I need to continue to run my feet and really transfer that block, probably stationary footwork, into some form of kind of movement footwork. So I think that's where we kind of, from a defensive line point of view, they're the two elements for, well, probably three elements for us. I think we'll probably just swing an arm out there. And actually, I want to swing the shoulder in there and work on that shoulder punch and kind of to get that and then uppercut with it, to be able to get across that blocker, rather than just swinging an arm and probably getting the old style clothesline kind of going on there. But I want to get that shoulder punch in there. I want to get that uppercut in there. And then the second thing is, obviously, I want to climb in, grab cloth. I want to get that grapple with them. And then I want to be able to transfer my feet into a running position. Because if I'm looking at missed tackles from the defensive line, it is normally they've threw an arm out there and the running backs just run through that arm. We might have been able to make some connection with one arm and then get the second one on there, but the clamp and the grapple isn't tight enough, and that's where they've been able to break that tackle there. And then finally, I think the other side of it is we might get some grapple and contact on there, but because then that running back is in motion and then I'm just then trailing with the running back and I haven't used my feet, then eventually that grapple could go and that clamp could go, and then we'll break a tackle that way. So I think it's really important to focus on those things when you are looking at the different positions. But from a D-line point of view, we've got to work on that close quarter movement of tracking and being able to change our level. But then when it comes to being connected to somebody, it's those three things that I think are really probably the most important of how we would do that. And kind of then how you progress the drill from there. So
yeah,
and a lot of information there, but
yeah. I mean, that losing the feet, you always see that classic photo where there's somebody hanging on to a running back and their feet are trailing behind, and
it's just got that single arm on the back of the running back. It's like I'm being dragged by the sled.
And like I mean, if anyone's not following Andy Ryland on Twitter, I suggest doing it straight away, because he does some fantastic stuff, and he's just retaining the feet and climbing up the ball carrier. And they're talking about finishing on top of the ball carrier rather than, like, say, being dragged along. But
yeah, and I think really when we have that connected tackle, and we make contact and we get that work of like climbing in this kind of here. If we run our feet, we've actually got quite a bit of rotational force there as well. So actually, kind of the hawk roll tackle that was normally done kind of at the lower level, at kind of level one there, we're actually in a position probably at the level 3 to potentially, if you run our feet and torque our body at that top level while we're climbing in, we're probably going to get some rotational force on the tackle that way, and that will help with taking down that ball carrier. Because I think the ability to create force from that angle when you're being blocked is something that we need to work on and keep kind of looking at of how we do that. But I think how you develop that drill is, I'd be starting off stationary. I'd be working on, each of the elements. But then actually one of the biggest things I want to be able to do is I actually want to see some force from the block, because that's one of the things from the defensive line point of view, and even the offensive line point of view. They're going to get force from different angles at different times, and we want to be able to try and replicate that in some way in our drills, because that force from different angles is exactly what we're going to see in a game, and we need to be able to feel and fight against that in some way, shape, or form. And it might just be a little bit of an extension that we were able to do, or a foot kind of pressure in that way that kind of stops that slightly. But we need to kind of be able to feel force and then react to it from that point of view. I mean, some of the drills that I've always done from the feeling the force side of things, and I've done it really from like a stretch blocking side of things, but it is something I'll develop into my tackling now after going through this period. Is I've always kind of got players fitted up and then got them to close their eyes, and then we've basically had that kind of offensive player work the block either to the left or the right hand side. So I wanted my defensive lineman to be able to feel where that force was coming from, and then be able to press that force. And for them to do it kind of blind, in essence, is really what I want them to do, because I want their eyes in the backfield. I want their eyes on the ball carrier and be able to find that ball carrier. So I want them to be able to feel the force. And that's one of the drills that I've done with all of my D linemen, is to be able to just get them to close their eyes and feel force. And I'll now kind of adapt that and put that into that kind of tackle drill, where they've got to kind of react to force, and then we'll give them a call where they can open their eyes, which works on the eye wash side of things, because we'll be in a situation where that running back as a defensive lineman is at times just going to appear, especially if you've got like a 6'4", 6'5" offensive lineman, and the running back's 5'10" or 5'9", and they'll just kind of, oh, there's the running back. I need to get onto him from that point of view. So yeah, there's kind of definitely through this period of time and going through the tackling side of things, and as you said with Richie, everything that he's got on there, Coach Finney, Coach Dig, who's on Twitter as well, everything he's got on there about tackling as well. Just there's so much out there on how tackling has developed and the different types of tackle that we can focus on, and I think we could like spend, I don't know, hours and hours talking about it, but I think we can also spend hours and hours drilling it on the field. And I think you really need to break it down to, right, okay, what does this position group need, and what are the main types of tackles that they will face? Because if you try and do everything, then it's just going to get too unwieldy for you from that point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big fan of tackling circuits. In a way, that sort of you're taking positions out of their sort of, I mean, taking people positions out of comfort zone is a positive thing, but taking them out of the correct tackle area. But you can always adapt each tackle area to the position. So when the DBs come over, you can just change that style of tackle.
Yeah, I mean, you can just change the level there from that point of view. You can extend the track side of things from a DB's point of view, and then reduce it down from the D line point of view. So I think it's really important to have those adaptations that you can for each of the position groups, because it's that whole special team circuit as well, isn't it? Really, that we always run. And am I really going to get the defensive lineman running like that nose tackle running down on kickoff and doing all the avoid stuff that way? But actually, if I reduce that drill down, and if I've got like my three blockers there, all within kind of 2 yards of each other for the defensive line, actually them just going walking and then running a pass rush move on the one block, walking to the next one, running a pass rush move, that's really beneficial from them from a pass rush point of view. Because when I look at pass rush for defensive line, we work a lot of stuff stationary, but actually they need to be able to do it when they're moving, because that offensive tackle versus one team, they might be a fast set offensive tackle, and they're going to gain some real depth. So it's going to be on my third or fourth step, I'm going to be having engagement in a pass rush move. But then I might have another team that has that offensive tackle that's really just going to take one step and is going to be a hard set straight away. So then it's going to be my first or second step I'm going to have my pass rush move. So our defensive line need to be able to undertake those pass rush moves at different levels and whilst moving and be able to react to those. So how we can adjust the tackling drills, how we can adjust our special team circuit drills to kind of focus on those different positions, I think is really important to look at, rather than just saying, right, okay, we've got this special team circuit, we've got this tackling circuit, and everyone's going to run the same drill. Well, yes, the defensive line may have a bit of a chase drill at some point, but in all reality, the kind of close contact level 3, grapple, clamp sort of things is going to be a lot better for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there is one positive from not having coaching on film, it's being able to reflect on those things and think, hang on a minute, we've always done it like that, but maybe we can adjust it.
Yeah, and I think for me, like personally, and stepping away, when I stepped away from the University of Birmingham and took on the position as BAFCA president, that allowed me some time to reflect on my own practices and then also delve back into my learning from that point of view, because I always attended the convention. We were really committed at the University of Birmingham to kind of on coach education, because we felt if we became better coaches through coach education and what we delivered to the players, then they would become better football players. And then the product would kind of take care of itself on the field, in essence. So I was always committed to that. But when I stepped away, it allowed me to do that even more. And I think through this period, it's allowed me to do even more as well. And I really do feel that's kind of enabled me to kind of look at how I delivered drills before, how I delivered techniques before, and then how that relates to the game. And I'm thinking, I'd never do that drill ever again because it's just not relevant. But then there's also elements where I think, why didn't I just tweak this thing on this drill to make, and it makes it so much more relevant. And like, I think one of those that just light bulb moment was like just the tackling drill where you just got like 3 yards apart and we're just going to like dip and fit on the tackle. And it was always, for me, it was like, do the players put their arms out wide to fit underneath? Do they imagine they're carrying a football? And then you look at the advanced tackling stuff and they put their arms straight out ahead and it's like that zombie look there. But it's the perfect kind of dip area of where we would make a tackle and we want players to be. And I'm like, why haven't I done that for the last 15 years? It's like, what, like, am I that dumb? Like, why haven't I thought about that for the last 15 years? But yeah, there's so much kind of that you can look at now. And I think you also, whenever you look at anything from the clinic film or the virtual stuff that's going on, it's how can I adapt that to my position group? How can I adapt that to my team, my unit, my scheme from that point of view? Because not everything fits the same, but it is potentially that there might be a slight tweak or change that will allow it to fit really.
And one of the things I sort of light bulb for me was tag things onto your drills so you get extra work. So the one they were field goal blocking, which is fantastic. The field goal unit got to kick a field goal, you got to block it, but also have somebody roll the football as though it was blocked and have the scoop and score man. So actually, you're doing 3 things in one section there. Just
and I think that's really important when you, especially at university football and your experience with this, where we've got our brand new rookie that's only ever put on a helmet and shoulder pads once, and they've only been in the program for 4 weeks or 5 weeks. And then I've got my GB student, 4-year starter, absolute veteran on a master's degree, absolute stud playing defensive line as well. And how do I develop this pure rookie whilst continuing to develop this? And that those additions to the drills are really, really important, because I might be doing that fit drill or I might be doing that contact tackle drill, but actually from the rookie point of view, it might be stationary with no pressure. But actually from the veteran point of view, I might be putting a lot of pressure on them from that side of things. And I want to see a full release and go. But it's how you adapt those to those players. And in the same drill, I can then hopefully have that rookie feeling comfortable and confident without being overawed. And then I can actually get my veteran player actually developing and pushing on, rather than being bored, thinking I've been doing this kind of fit drill or this contact drill for the last kind of 4 years, and I'm just fed up of it now.
Exactly. So we've got a bit more time left. I thought we'd touch a little bit on sort of quarterback contain. So,
I hate that word, Simon. I hate that word, contain.
well, that's right. I just thought we'd touch on it and talk about some, because I was talking to Coach Scott, Jason Scott, and he was saying, oh, on the front side, they don't even bother worrying about contain. They just let it sort out, which is great. And then on the back side, you've got somebody who does the contain job. So talk about some sort of coaching points on that.
Yeah, I think for me, this started off actually quite a long time ago at a BAFCA convention with Coach Jim Tomsula. I don't know if you were there, and if anyone's ever listened to Coach Jim Tomsula, like I could spend hours, like days, just listening to him because he was just phenomenal. But it really hit home then, just like that kind of the word contain, just being quite I just want to contain them, a bit of a kind of a passive kind of terminology. So we always talk about setting the edge or putting a stake in the ground when we talk about D-line and kind of that contain element. So from that point of view, we want to set the edge of the play wherever it might be, whether it be run or pass. And sometimes we might have that soft edge. So as Coach Scott was talking about, depending on the team and depending on what we're trying to do from a scheme point of view, it might be that we have a soft edge on one of those sides. So in other words, we might kind of have that 4-eye or that 4 technique going into the B gap, or we might have the 5 technique stemming inside and have that soft edge. But it really depends a little bit on the scheme and what the player's doing. But really for me, I always want our kind of defensive linemen to play half a man. And I think that's where we get in trouble sometimes, is where players end up kind of playing the whole body of the man. I always want them to play I say the half, but really I want a third. I always want our players to be able to play kind of from the collarbone to the outside from that point of view, because that keeps their hip free. And also it keeps us, these are our levers kind of thing here. So if we're pressing this lever here, then I'm more likely to get that kind of shoulder and hip turn so I can to run the corner. But also by pressing that kind of third there, I'm in a situation where if I am setting the edge and that there is an escape, I am able to release because I've got my hip free, I've got my arm and shoulder free. I can release that way on that side of things. So we always work on releases with our D-line. So whether that be from run or pass, we'll work them kind of to set the edge, and then they will have their releases there. And I think it's important to work those releases because we want to be realistic. Like, in honesty, we want athletes on the defensive line. However, in honesty, that quarterback should be a faster athlete than the defensive end or the defensive tackle. I say should because there are some anomalies out there. But in essence, I don't want to always, if I do have to release, I don't want to be in a chase situation. I want to be able to release and have positive angles. So that's one of the things that we talk about with our players and we're working with our players, is that when we are releasing, we want to be look at those cutoff angles and try and get back to that leverage point. But also we want to be in a situation where we are setting that edge of the play. We never want to run past the quarterback. We always want to be kind of in front of the quarterback, working the quarterback, squeezing that pocket. And then if we do end up getting level or slightly behind, that's when we'll be able to come back inside of that. So we'll work on our counter moves from that point of view if we are just working upfield. And we don't teach it a lot, but we'll teach that spin technique back inside from there. When I am setting the edge, for me, the kind of, I call it the throat technique, but the long arm is something that we teach quite a lot because that helps us as well with, from a run and a pass point of view, from kind of the stretch play, the outside zone, that kind of long arm and pinning that inside, again, keeps me free to the outside and be able to set that edge. So, yeah, I think setting the edge of the play and kind of putting that stake in the ground so nothing can come outside of us is really important. But I think you've also got to understand that from your scheme and what you're trying to achieve there. And that also, when you look at it from a run point of view, that also determines whether, if they're going to run counter or trap on that defensive end, dependent on my scheme, am I going to then ask that defensive end to kind of spill it or stake it? So in essence, I want to be able to put the stake in the ground, attack it with my inside shoulder, and set the edge that way. Or am I going to ask them to spill it because I'm expecting a soft edge, and that means I've got my safety and my outside linebacker playing kind of force and alley that way. So I think when you look at your defensive line play, you've also got to look at it from what your scheme and how you want to play your scheme. And because you also, and I think this is something that me and you have spoken about before, and I know obviously Coach Collins and Coach Thacker at Georgia have spoken about, is that we're a leverage-based defense, and whether I set the edge or I have a soft edge has to fit within my leverage-based defense, and all the players being able to maintain their leverage.
Yeah, one of the best things I heard was back when we're containing the quarterback for pass, is you're actually containing the quarterback, not the offensive line, because defensive linemen are so concerned about making an inside move, but you're not containing the whole offensive line. You're just making sure you keep the quarterback in the pocket.
Yeah, and I think we've got to look at that from kind of the interior defensive lineman as well. And I think we're also very worried about the escape of being to the outside for the quarterback. But actually, if I'm playing a forefront and my defensive tackles kind of get washed outside, then actually, by the time my backers have dropped, there's 10, 15 yards there straight away. So I'm not only kind of setting the edge of the play, I want to set the inside of the play as well from those defensive linemen as well, because I can't have that defensive tackle, that 3 technique, washed out to a 7 or a 9, because it's just going to then create major issues inside. And I think we don't see that a lot, probably in British football. But I think as we kind of move forward with the development of the game and the development of athletic quarterbacks, and if we're looking at playing internationally and in competitions, then from that point of view, we need to work those defensive linemen on the setting the edge outside, but we need to be able to set the edge inside as well from that. And I think that's really, really important when you have that athletic quarterback, because stepping up into the pocket and escaping that way is pretty scary, because there's probably even more space inside than there is outside. Because if I'm chasing a quarterback outside, they're going to get probably another 5 yards worth, 6 yards worth of depth beyond the line of scrimmage. So the outside linebacker and the safety can then come up on that, and it might be a 3-yard gain, it might be a 0-yard gain, but straight away interior, it's going to be 5 yards regardless.
Definitely, yeah. Quite often the defensive backfield have got their backs turned and they're running away. So.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of, don't want to I feel like I'm telling everyone to run quarterback draw on us now. And
well,
yeah. We don't want that to happen. So we need to make sure we set the inside as well.
And just tell if a quarterback does escape and he's on the outside, how would you teach your defensive line to pursue that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's I want to work them angles, and I want to be able to. I don't want any of them to be in a situation where they are, in essence, chasing. What I like to be able to do is, if we get that outside release, usually it's that kind of that backside defensive end. I like to keep at the depth of the quarterback. So, because really that backside defensive end is never going to be in a situation. I've only ever had one backside defensive end chase a play downfield. And that was Kyle Burrows, and he was an absolute athlete. And he was just phenomenal. Like, he chased a quarterback that beat our edge, and he chased the guy down 60 yards downfield from the backside, and it was phenomenal. But that is very, very rare. But I'd like that player to be at the level of the quarterback, because if that quarterback does stop, or does hold up to turn back anyway, that chase will catch him there. And then my front side 2 or my front side 3, whatever that might be, I then want them to work at kind of the angles of pursuit. And one of the drills on the AFCA convention this week, actually, that we were talking about before we came on air, worked on a kind of 3-man kind of pursuit drill. So they'd work at that 3-man. So they'd have their 3 defensive line and work on that pursuit angle. But then they would then potentially have 2 defensive line and a linebacker, and they'd work at different depths and work at that. And then it could be kind of a safety, a linebacker, and a defensive lineman. So just a little drill like that, working on that. But I would want my front side to have probably that cut-off point at kind of 0 yards gained, but really working at kind of focusing on that inside hip and working at that level. And then the second 2, I'd be looking to work kind of a bit more downfield, not following each other, but trying to be in a situation where we're in that chase technique there. So aiming for like kind of that 3-yard position downfield and maybe 7 to 8 yards position downfield, if there is any kind of thing that we would need to chase that side. Because even by them starting off on those angles, if it does get blocked up, it's easy for them to then cut that off and then get back upfield. But what we can't have is if we start on a narrow angle and they beat that angle and then we're on a chase, and that defensive tackle is never going to chase down that outside QB run. So I'd rather than be in an overly avert angle to cut off the long play and then come back up to it, than be in a situation where they're like following each other or just chasing. I want definitely those interior 2 to be able to change that. So I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely, I completely agree. I like them to go and then climb back up to the quarterback, so they're in front of the quarterback. Yeah. Quarterbacks don't really get distracted by someone chasing them, but they do by people coming in front of them.
And if we look at it, and I saw this a couple of times in that kind of that defensive tackle on the backside, if they're climbing to kind of 8 yards away, then if that, one of the things, if they do release, and it might be a sprint out rollout action from that point of view, but you'll probably get that drag coming back across the field in some way, shape or form. And usually that defensive tackle, because they're in that chase mode, will actually be getting into that vision of the quarterback on that. So it won't be the safety or the linebacker because they're probably a bit further over. But that QB is not going to throw the ball back inside because, I mean, the defensive tackle is probably going to drop it anyway, but that's why a defensive tackle. But the fact of the matter is, just being in that vision is going to affect that throw. So, yeah, I think getting them to be able to climb back in, I like that terminology, climb back into the play, is really, really positive for them. But I do like that backside defensive end to chase at the depth of the quarterback, because then for me as well, that's the protection against the trick play a little bit as well. Because then if we get that kind of end around reverse side of things from that sprint action, that backside chase at the level of the quarterback is then in a position to be able to redirect and climb to the goalpost to be able to cut that off.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Wayne. We took up plenty of your time.
No problem at all, Simon. I really appreciate you doing this, and it's great to just be able to talk football with you at any particular time, but especially in the current situation, just to have that normality and be able to talk about our passions is just really important at this time. So I encourage as many people as possible, if you can keep doing this, to get on with you and talk football and just keep learning. I mean, everything, how we taught tackling when we first started out is very different to how we taught tackling 5 years ago, and that's very different to how we taught tackling now. So everything is changing, everything is ever evolving, and if we're ever stuck in our ways, then that's going to be a bit of a problem for us. So I think we just need to keep learning, getting better and adapting and keep developing what we're delivering to our players to make them better.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.